your best interest in mind. Join Dr. Eckel in this fun and sometimes disturbing exploration of the state of healthcare and what it means for you. Now, here's your host, Dr. Eckel.
Welcome back, everybody. I am Dr. Greg Eckel, and this is What the Health. And I've got another awesome topic today, optimizing men's health. This is one we haven't really touched on in the most recent past, and I brought on the expert, Dr. Tracy Gapin, MD, board-certified urologist, world-renowned men's health and performance expert, best-selling author and professional speaker. He has over 20 years of experience focused on providing Fortune 500 executives, entrepreneurs, and athletes a personalized path to optimizing their health and performance. Dr. Gapin incorporates precision hormone optimization, peptide therapy, which I'm very excited to talk to him about, state-of-the-art biometric tracking, epigenetic coaching, and cutting-edge management protocols to help men realize their full potential so that they can be the husbands, fathers, and leaders they're meant to be. Dr. Gapin, welcome aboard.
Thanks, Dr. Eckel. Thanks so much for having me.
Indeed. I love that you've been at the forefront of this topic for so long, and you really talked about the men's health pandemic. So, men were special creatures, right? And what is the men's health pandemic?
Yeah, so, we are experiencing worldwide plummeting testosterone levels, okay? We've seen levels here in the US, here in multiple European studies. Testosterone levels have dropped by over 30% over the last 2 decades. We've seen rising incidence of obesity and cardiovascular disease. And for the first time in a long time, our lifespan, our life expectancy is actually decreasing. And this is pretty dramatic. What's unfortunate is that there's no one talking about this. It's getting no attention. And it's really what I would call a men's health crisis that's just not getting the attention that it deserves.
That is so true. It's like the castration. I mean, we've even seen it because you've been in practice the last 20 years plus. We've even seen it with the labs incorporating this pathology of lowering of testosterone, right? Like the high end of the lab used to be 1,200 for men in testosterone, and it just dipped in the last year or two to 900 to accommodate this decrease of testosterone. What is going on with that over the last 2 decades?
And I'm so glad you bring this up, because this is a common issue I see where doctors will order a testosterone level in a man and it'll come back, let's say 400, let's just say. And they'll look at the reference range, and that reference range, I want to emphasize, like you just pointed out, is not the normal range. It is not normal. When it says a range of 193 to 900, that is not the normal range. What that is it's simply the average of the population. You look at all lab values across the testing that's done, they take a median and they go 2 standard deviations on either side of that and create a bell curve, and that's your reference range. Yeah. Given what we know that testosterone levels are plummeting every year worldwide, and we could talk about why, but it's fact that they're decreasing. That reference range keeps getting shifted lower and lower to make us believe that men are normal, healthy, okay, fine, when their testosterone levels are 200, 300, 400, 500, and they're just not.
Yeah. I've seen like actually all-cause mortality under 300 goes way up through the roof for men, which I kind of drew the line in the sand at that point for our patient population. But, the other aspect that I really wanted to get into with you is, men, we get kind of just grouped into, you hear the ads and you see it in the sporting events as, oh, it's low testosterone, right? It's all about your libido. But this is such a broader discussion on health and well-being. And, we are much more than just testosterone. Help me out here, Doc.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is what I mean by a crisis. So when people initially think testosterone, they think sex, drive, libido, building muscle, meatheads. Testosterone is so much more than that. It has to do with a man's cognitive function, his ability to focus, his memory, his concentration, his mood, his metabolism, his energy, his ability to stay focused on his task at hand, his ability to be a present and engaged husband and father to his kids and help him be really the man that he is. It's intimately tied to our confidence as well. And so when we talk about testosterone, that's just one piece of men's health. But I want to emphasize that this is not just about sex. It's not just about building muscle. This is not just about aesthetics or anything like that. This is about a man's life.
Yeah. Yeah. And that aspect of it, looking at it as a kind of a full systems approach, how do you couch that discussion in your executive programming, your athletic programming, your general Joe programming? Like how does this fit in here?
Great question. So I see a lot of men in my practice who will either see me via telehealth remotely or come into the center, and they will have already been on testosterone. And the common complaint is, Doc, I'm on T, but I still feel like crap. And this really drives home the point that you just made, and that is that men need a systems approach to health. So what does that mean? That means that we are complex creatures. We are a system that has multiple inputs that all ultimately affect our function, our performance, our health, our longevity. And testosterone is just one piece of that much bigger picture. And so I've created what I call the MALE framework, which is MALE. M is mindset, A is aging, L is lifestyle, and A is environment. And we can look at each of the pieces of that framework and how all of these come together to ultimately affect outcome and ultimately affect performance. So I'll give you one example. If you're sleeping poorly, which most of the men I'm working with are sleeping poorly, you can get all the testosterone in the world, and that's not going to help you feel better. And so that's how we need to look at all of the inputs to the system if we're going to ultimately achieve the desired result.
What, just out of curiosity, so for folks listening, viewing, what would be sleeping poorly? What's that look like? Because I think oftentimes folks think like, oh, well, you're not getting enough sleep or something like that. But what does that look like for the men coming through your program?
Great question. I am all about data. I love to interpret data. I love to leverage data. And so when we look at sleep, there's no exception. So when a guy comes to see me, I'll ask how their sleep is. And subjectively, qualitatively, they may say, yeah, I'm sleeping fine. I go to bed at 11:30. I wake up at 5:30. I'm fine. That's all I need, 6 hours, or maybe even they're actually getting 7 hours. But the key question is, what is your deep sleep and what's your REM sleep? Yeah. And so what I mean by this is, when we sleep, for the listeners, we have stages of sleep. We have REM sleep, which is our very, very light sleep, which is when you're dreaming, when you're just barely asleep and you're easily arousable. And then you have the 2 stages of light sleep and then the 2 stages of deep sleep. And you go in this pattern, this cycle throughout the night. Each night you'll go through about 3 or 4 of these cycles, REM, light, deep, and back up again. Well, we know that the REM sleep and the deep sleep are the 2 phases of sleep, especially the deep sleep, which is critically important when it comes to the restorative effect of sleep, when it comes to the repair aspect of sleep. And so when I work with my clients, I don't want to know how you think you slept. I want to look at your data and I want to know how you slept. And so my guys are going to wear a device, whether it's a watch, whether it's a band, whether it's a ring, whatever device they may choose to wear. There are a bunch of them out there. I'm agnostic.
I was going to ask if you had a preference.
Yeah, I have a few favorites, but suffice it to say I'm relatively agnostic. But there are some better than others. But the key is look at your data and understand what is your deep sleep and what is your REM sleep. And what I find is almost universally men are struggling with poor sleep. And it could be somewhat of a chicken or the egg situation. You can tie this back to cortisol, which is our stress hormone, and back to testosterone. And it's which came first, chicken or the egg? Was it high cortisol and low testosterone, which is causing the poor sleep, or is it vice versa? Or are they potentially interacting with each other?
Got it. And do you like those numbers to be, I think 20% I've seen for REM and deep, as far as percentages, greater than 20% of those in the grand scheme, and then the total amount of sleep, just as we're on that topic?
Yeah, great question. In general, total sleep, we look for around 7 hours of sleep is really what I would consider the minimum. But when we're looking at deep and REM sleep, I want deep sleep to be about 1 hour of sleep. Okay, so that's about 1/7 or so, 15% or so. And then we want the REM sleep, to be 2 hours. So again, deep sleep 1 hour, REM 2 hours should be your general target.
Got it. Great. With a minimum of 7 hours, right?
Minimum 7 total, exactly.
And,
yeah, that's
perfect.
right.
Perfect.
That's right.
So in that systems-based approach to health, you have written, you've lectured, you have keynotes on different aspects saying, you see in the future of medicine being less reliant on hormones and having peptides really take the front of the center stage, let's say. In this systems-based approach, you're collecting data, you're looking at all the facets of a man's health. Maybe go through your framework of the male, and then also I put in the show notes your generous offer of your book. So we've got that link down there, because I really want the women in the men's lives, get the book for them. You know how men are. And what we're trying to do is really change that culture for men to actually be able to talk about their health, because we really need men to show up in our society, right? One of the basic tenets of this platform that I created, What the Health, is I really want people to thrive, and it's in community. So it's as an individual, in relationship, and in community. That's how the more beautiful world our hearts know and desire gets created. So I really appreciate your expertise coming on here. So if we reframe that question for you on the systems approach, how are you putting that in? Like, do you put more emphasis on certain systems or in your framework? Let's walk through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to just briefly comment that I really do appreciate your platform as well. And it's really a great opportunity for us to really highlight these really important health issues. And, we need to get both men and women, I deal mostly with men, obviously, but we need to get people to start living with intention and take control of their health, and don't simply wait for disease. Don't wait for symptoms or problems to occur. Take a proactive participatory role in your health. And that's really what my book Male 2.0 was about, was really shifting that paradigm of men's health from Male 1.0, which is wait for disease, wait for symptoms, wait till you have issues in the bedroom and then seek help, look for a one-size-fits-all solution, to Male 2.0. And so to answer your question, we are shifting to a bio-individualized approach to health. And we're really at a tipping point where we're going to start seeing a lot more AI-driven health, and a lot more advanced diagnostic tools that we can use analytics to really take a data-driven approach. And so when I use this systems approach to men, I look at the male framework as a way to help guys organize this content, or the structure, to help them kind of know what to focus on. So M is mindset, and I'll start with mindset because, number one, guys have to be focused on what is their why, and have to live with intention and really be true to themselves. And if your head's not on straight, if you're not focused with what your long-term goals are, you're never going to achieve success. If you're just trying to improve your health because your wife is nagging you, we all know how that's going to end up. It's not going to work. So it has to really come from the heart.
Yeah.
And, my why is my family, my wife, my beautiful kids, and everything I do is in alignment with that why. And I try to really ingrain that in the men I work with as well. Along with that, in the mindset category, I talk a lot about stress and stress resilience and stress mitigation. And, we can't get rid of stress, but we can certainly change how we react and how we respond to stress, how we can deal with it and incorporate it into our lives, and then set it aside and do what we got to do. And so stress resilience really ties in directly with everything else that we work on. A for aging is really the nerdy, geeky stuff. This is looking at things like cellular efficiency, cellular functions, hormone optimization, things like, not just testosterone, but what about thyroid and DHEA and vitamin D and estrogen and progesterone and melatonin and all these other hormones that no one ever talks about in men, but they're all vitally important. And so looking at how all these hormones come into play. This is the category where I also integrate peptides, and peptides are really an amazing way to take a very individualized approach to health. And I might set peptides aside, since that's a whole separate topic.
We'll come back to that after.
I'll put a footnote there.
Yeah.
L is lifestyle. Typically we need to, be mindful of of our sleep, our sleep, our nutrition, and our fitness. Basic lifestyle tenets. And I really believe that a lot of disease starts there. understanding what you should and should not be eating. We can use your genetics to take a very deeper dive into a personalized approach to what's right for you. We can look at, based on your genetics, what type of exercise program should you be doing? And then again, we can really emphasize sleep hygiene, things that we can do to optimize sleep. And then the E is environment. So here I look at gut health. Many of us professionals believe that our health begins and ends in the gut. And I think that that's really a key focus for any aspect of health to make sure that you're taking care of your microbiome. Here we look at immune function. Here we look at toxins, chemicals, what are endocrine disruptors in our environment, which are known to crush hormones and cause autoimmune disease and cause infertility and obesity and insulin resistance and diabetes and cancer and so on and so on. And so understanding how these toxins are affecting our system and how can we improve our detoxification to clear those toxins is part of the E for environment.
Love it. Oh, that's a great framework on the male.
Yeah.
And so I want to unpack some pieces in there for folks. And I love that you started with mindset. And people don't typically go to the doctor thinking they're looking for like, what's the level in my blood or what can I take? And you're leading right out there with the mindset and the purpose-driven life. And that, one of the questions I've been asking my patient base is, what is a life worth living? And where do you find joy? And I've been flummoxed at how many people cannot answer what brings you joy at this current day and age. And so I'm wondering on the mindset front in engaging in that discussion with men, what do you see? What are some of the resistances or pitfalls or kind of blind sides for folks?
Yeah, great question. A lot of guys are very superficial in our thinking and take. I don't mean to be disparaging or negative toward men, but we tend to say, I want to lose 10 pounds. Well, why? Because I just want to be thinner. Well, why?
Yeah.
Well, because I want to fit in my pants. Well, why?
Yeah.
And so when you dive really deep down, it's not that they want to lose 10 pounds or they want to lose their beer belly or they want to be able to fit in those pants or wear that sport coat that doesn't fit anymore. It's none of that nonsense. You know what it is? It's that they want to feel loved by their partner, that they want to feel sexy or they want to feel attractive by their wife. They want to feel like they're a great dad. They want to feel important. They want to feel valued. There's some underlying motivation that is a man's why. And so sometimes it takes a little time and it takes some digging to really understand what is that why. And that's what's going to be the real driver. So now if I take a guy and I help him lose 20 pounds and I haven't fixed his confidence or I haven't fixed his mood or I haven't fixed his sleep or all these other aspects of health, what have I really done for the guy? He's lost 20 pounds. I haven't helped him. So I haven't succeeded. And so that was really a superficial target that was not really his why. Yeah. And so that's where it comes down to living true to what is your ultimate why and staying true to that. And so I love the phrase living with intention so that everything you do is in alignment with that ultimate goal.
I love it. It really makes the decision framework and the motivation much more clear and then also gives people. So if you're a woman watching this for your man, awesome. And definitely make sure they watch it. But if you're a man watching this for you and your community, this aspect, it really makes decision-making process so much easier of, should I do this or that? Well, how is it aligned with your purpose? What is your mission? What are you living for? Like that component of a life worth living. I mean, I think, we do all want more love. Like that is evident in my discussions with people clinically for 21 years. And just personally, what motivates me is it's that love component of, can we bring more love into this world? Because it is, it's important, right? It lights us up. It's what motivates me. So that aspect of the mindset is so often missing in other trains of thought or, like, well, let's get your T up. That way, your libido, like men are more than libido. Yes, it's an important quality of life issue. And it's, you know, it's these other drivers, these connections that you're talking about with the other hormones in general. Just how do you feel? Like, are you energetic and up and giving and loving, or are you drained and nagging, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I love that we're diving deep here, because so many men will come to my office and will see me for, you know, sexual function. We're talking about gains wave treatments for improving sexual performance, which is amazing. And all these other tools I have for improving hormones. But then a lot of guys, it comes down to, you know, what do you want? What's your goal? What are you living for? And so I think it's really important to spend this time with men, emphasizing that it's not all about the drugs or the other treatments that are amazing. They're wonderful in and of themselves. But, you know, another way to think about this is, imagine that you make $1 million a week. Okay. So many men are driven by money, you know, building a business, selling businesses, buying, selling, working, blah, blah, blah. I got to make money, got to make money. But just stop for a second and assume you made $1 million a week. What would you do with it? And how would it change your life? And when I did that exercise myself, when I first heard this, and I can't take credit for this, I'm stealing this, but I think it's worth sharing it. It made me realize, holy cow, what you think is important is not important. The money is not important. It's a vehicle.
Right.
Losing weight is not what's important. It's the vehicle. What is that trying to get you? It's to feel loved, to be a better present dad, to be able to take care of your partner, whatever that underlying motive may be. So I'm glad we spent time here, because I think it's certainly worth emphasizing.
It truly is. I mean, when it boils down to, we're not taking the toys, the land, the, you know, the empire that we built. You can't take any of that with you. And
Sure.
So it's, what is our legacy? What are we leaving to those that we love, and in the communities, in our families, etc.? Like, what is it that we're leaving, and what are we doing while we're here? Because those components I see so often, you know, it's like in the future, it's out there, but there's not that why. And people are, men in particular, aren't connected to their purpose and their passion. And that is so essential. So I'm really psyched that we got to unpack that.
Absolutely. Yeah, you bet. And you know, this also ties into the other part of mindset that I think is worth emphasizing as well, as the stress component. And every one of us is stressed by something in our lives, whether it's financial, whether it's health, whether it's you know, marital, whether it's social, whatever it may be. And you can never get rid of all the stresses in your life. And so how do you deal with it? How do you accommodate that stress? And this is where I really emphasize things like breathing. And it's a joke. People think, well, yeah, I know how to breathe. They kind of laugh when I first bring this up. But things like breathing, no one knows how to breathe properly unless you've actually trained yourself. Most of us breathe too often, too deeply, and through our mouth.
Yeah.
And that's actually affecting performance in every way. And so affecting stress through breathing, through mindfulness practices, meditation, through relaxation, through whatever the joys are in your life, you know, all that plays into the mindset aspect.
I love that. You know, the component, I've been having a lot of discussions around stress, trauma, stress, and it's really our response to an event or to the stimulation or stimulus. And we, like the breath work, I mean, number one, I mean, the pat answer is don't stop breathing, right? Don't recommend stopping. And thank you for laughing at that.
It does not end well.
It does not. You do not go well without breathing. But you're so right that the contraction of the diaphragm and proper breath work. Do you have any resources or ideas around that on what is proper breathing?
Yeah, so there's actually a great book in my library here that I'll turn around and share with you. Amazing book, James Nestor, called Breath. Amazing. And there's also another one called Oxygen Advantage. I can't find it in my library right now, but for the sake of time,
yes,
both of those are amazing at teaching you how to breathe through your nose, breathe slowly, and you need to let the air almost fall out. And so a way to think of it is, you should be breathing in for 6 seconds. You should be holding it for 6 seconds. you should be breathing out for 6 seconds. That's a general, 5.5 seconds to be exact, but we'll call it 6 to make it even. So if you can focus on that through your nose, that's going to go a long way to kind of get you started on that. A lot of people talk about taping your mouth closed. There's all these products out there trying to make money off you. You could take a piece of Scotch tape.
Yeah,
paper tape. You don't need to spend a lot of money on this. But tape your mouth shut for a while, and you'll realize how much you breathe through your mouth. And so to share a brief physiology here without getting too nerdy, what this does is when you breathe too often, you lower your CO2 levels, your carbon dioxide levels in your body. And what that does is that affects your hemoglobin molecule. It affects its ability to release oxygen at your target tissue. And so your oxygen, your oxygenation levels may be 100%, but that hemoglobin will not release that oxygen to where it needs to go. And so it ultimately affects tissue perfusion. And so that affects everything from focus, from mind, from brain function, cognitive function, to energy, to muscle function, hormone production, and so on. It goes on and on and on. And so oxygen release is critically affected by how much CO2 you're breathing out.
Perfect. Oh, that was nice. Thank you for unpacking that for us. Because a lot of people, that book is awesome. I'm glad you brought it up. That's a whole nother, we could do a whole 2 hours on breath work, etc. So I want to keep it moving on all of this in the auspices of men's health and aging, tenets of aging and longevity, because that's another kind of flag in the earth that we've planted here on what the health is. We want to bring these topics to folks. And, longevity is like the buzz term right now, right? So tenets of aging, how do you put that into the framework of maybe high performers or the executive functioning folk that you're dealing with along those lines?
Yeah, so a great question. I put it in the aging category, and a lot of guys will initially be skeptical, but I could point to a couple studies that show that we are really at a tipping point in the research and the discoveries we're making in the fields of longevity. So we know, as you mentioned, that there are really 9 tenets of aging. There are 9 cellular processes that we know are the foundational aspects of aging. And we know from animal studies that if we can affect these processes, that we can either slow or reverse the process of aging. And that sounds ridiculous, I know, but if you read a couple books, Lifespan by David Sinclair is probably one of the most amazing books I've ever read. He talks about a lot of this, but knowing that there are ways of modulating those processes and turning them around, we can show that will affect the aging process. So we can look at things like senolytics, which are tools that we can use to clear out cellular debris or senescent cells. So senescent cells, basically when your body goes through life, cells will die, new cells will grow, and there's this process of recycling and cells dying and new cells growing. As you get older, some of those cells that should die, they don't go away. They stick around, like they don't leave. Like I joke, like it's your mother-in-law that just won't leave when you want her to. I love you, Kathy.
Yes.
These cells are called senescent cells in the fact that they don't ever leave. They stick around and they secrete enzymes, cytokines, chemokines. And what it does is it creates a toxic effect on all the cells around it, specifically stem cells, which are the progenitor cells for every other new cell. And so it ultimately causes aging by affecting new cell formation. And so there are now tools that we have at our disposal now that we're able to use that are called senolytics that will clear away those senescent cells. And so understanding how to do that is just one facet of aging and how to reverse aging. And we have 2 very powerful studies now that have shown us that we can reverse aging. Well, the obvious question is, well, how do you quantify that? How do you prove that? Well, there are ways of actually measuring aging. So there's the Horvath clock, which is a way that we can look at our DNA and look at marks on our DNA called methylation patterns. And these marks on your DNA have been quantified to correlate with biologic or physiologic aging. And so I am 49 years old myself, but I am 43 years old when I look at my biologic aging. And so we can use biologic aging as a way to quantify aging. And that's how these studies have shown that we can actually reverse that through various maneuvers.
Yeah, I love that. I get to hang out with Dr. Horvath coming up here in January,
Nice.
and just did a little intern with David Sinclair in Harvard. So
Oh, wow.
it is, really the topics of the day. We actually are at the time in our history where we are showing age reversal. And Dr. Greg Fahey with his study on mice and now on humans, and this is possible. And I love the concept that if we reversed our aging by 7 years, we would eliminate 50% of all chronic illness in the world. So if we did that across the board around the globe, so age reversal is not just sci-fi anymore, folks. It really is. It's just like basically stay alive for the next 2 decades, right? Like that's the key. And what we're talking about today is, well, how do we make that enjoyable for you?
Yeah, you're right. It's not just about living to 120, but it's about living with a good quality of life. And that's called health span, where you have a good health, not just living, but health span is really the focus. And Sinclair, I think, predicted that half of all the children born today will live to be at least 100 years old. Half. Yeah. It's really incredible. So it's an amazing, exciting time right now. And the research coming out on an almost weekly basis, it's tough to keep up with it all, but it's super exciting.
What are some of the bigger levers that you've discovered in your practice and working with men on helping with that? Oftentimes when you say, oh, well, who wants to live to be 100? Because have you seen the people out there? Like they're decrepit and old.
Exactly. Yeah, we look at things like how do we improve autophagy? So autophagy is clearing out the cellular trash or cellular debris, taking out the trash, if you will, that each cell produces. And how can we improve autophagy, which we know is one of the tenets of aging? And so we know things like fasting, and fasting sounds super boring. Guys want the sexy drug. But something as simple as fasting for 24 hours has ridiculous benefits when it comes to autophagy and hence longevity. And so, in fact, fasting is probably one of the most powerful ways that we can extend lifespan. And it's boring. It doesn't have much appeal, but it works. And so it's a strategic fasting. So I'm not just saying fast every day. I recommend for my clients, I recommend intermittent fasting, which is time restricted feeding, which means you eat within a small window of time during the day and you fast the rest of the day. So that would look like eating within a 4 to 6 hour window, let's just say, and fasting in an 18 to 20 hour window. And if you incorporate your sleep into that time of fasting, it's actually not too painful when you first get started. It sounds overwhelming, but it's actually fairly easy. And then about once a week or so, I incorporate a 24-hour fast as well, where you drink water and coffee and tea. I'm fine with that, as long as there's no sugar, no calories. And that's an amazing way to start. So we can look at improving autophagy. We can look at things like improving mitochondrial function. So mitochondria are the workhorse of the cell, the powerhouse. It's how you create energy. And so we can look at ways of improving mitochondrial function. We can look at things like NAD. So NAD plus is a molecule that when I was in medical school back in the Paleozoic era, NAD, you remember this, NAD was just another molecule. Like, yeah, who cares? It was nothing. Now we really believe that it's like the miracle of life.
Yeah.
And then optimizing NAD levels is where it's all at. And so how can you improve your NAD level of production and salvage pathway? And I don't want to get too scientific, but there are ways that we can improve NAD production as well. And so these are just a few of the ways that we can really affect aging.
I love it. I love it. So this is a good place to bring back that placeholder on peptides, because this one I've seen you really predict and on these are going to be the new bioidentical hormones in the next decade. And there's a lot of buzz about peptides. They've been around for a while. There's over 90 years of research on certain peptides. Wondering clinically, what are you seeing with them? What do you think of those?
Yeah, so peptides are amazing, and every time I start talking about peptides, I say that because I don't know how else to describe them simply. For the listeners, peptides are simply short proteins. Okay, they're simply short chains of amino acids. And these short proteins, if you will, can have very amazing but precise function in the body. So example, insulin is actually a peptide. It was one of the first peptides ever identified, like you said, 90 plus years ago. Growth hormone is a peptide. We can look at peptides that can help reduce systemic inflammation, peptides that can help improve immune function, peptides that can help with musculoskeletal repair. You've had a shoulder or knee scope and you're repairing, or you tore your ACL, or you're dealing with a sprained ankle, or whatever it may be, musculoskeletal wise, great peptide for recovery. Peptides for gut health, peptides for cognitive function, for memory, for anxiety, peptides for sexual function, libido, erections, peptides for skin, peptides for hair loss. So you see how it goes on and on and on. These are incredible molecules because these proteins are signaling molecules that your body already recognizes. These are not drugs, they're not pharmaceuticals, they're not patented by big pharma. They are basically proteins, short proteins, that your body has lost effective levels of, that you can replenish, if you will, to restore those levels to where they need to be so that you can achieve whatever desired outcome you may want. And so I love peptides. There are relatively few, if any, side effects with most peptides. They're safe as long as you get them from a good, reputable, reliable source. If you can buy them yourself without a doctor, that company is excluded. Therefore, typically I recommend compounding pharmacies that know what they're doing. But they're great, and they really provide a way to take a bio-individualized approach to health. It's no longer just take this pill for this ill, take this pharmaceutical. It's really about precision, and peptides is just one tool in our toolbox.
Love it. I love it. And are you, when you're utilizing those with your patients, because oftentimes, one, I love that you put the caveat, if you can get it without a doctor's prescription, you really want to have some extreme caution, because you're putting a program into your body and you don't really know what's in that compound that you're putting in there.
I'm sorry, exactly right. And if you look at these companies that are out there that are selling direct to consumer, they're technically, I want to clarify here, they're technically research chemicals. If you're buying them like that, if they're not from a compounding pharmacy where they can document purity and QA control, then they're just research chemicals.
That's so important. I actually just got off a consult right before this, and the woman held it up, said, it says for research purposes. I was like, yeah.
You're gonna take that?
Did you enroll in a research study?
Exactly.
So quality matters. It's kind of what I teach is really source matters. You want to know where it's coming from, what's in it, and right, is it going to behave the way? People taking peptides, are they going to notice it right away, or what is your experience with that? I mean, that's a broad question, right? Because we've got from, melanin site, stimulating cells to basically CJC and ipamorelin, which is growth hormone.
Yeah.
What are you noticing for folks to actually notice it?
Yeah, great question. So some peptides you will not notice right away. Like apidolon is one that's been shown to extend longevity. That's a 2 amino acid chain peptide. You take that twice a year, 20 days for twice every 6 months. That one, you're not going to necessarily feel anything. So that's kind of boring. You're like, whatever. Thymosin alpha is great for immune function. You may not feel anything with that, although that's probably one of the most amazing peptides out there. It's been around for 20 plus years. But some, like C-Link, is amazing for anxiety, and that will help overnight.
Yeah.
Some like melanotan 2 or PT141 are amazing for libido and erections, and those work immediately. Some like CJC ipamorelin, which is great for boosting your body's natural production of growth hormone. I'll see guys have horrible sleep. They'll start CJC ipamorelin, and 2 days later, they notice a miraculous improvement in the quality of their sleep. And so it depends on what the peptide is, what you're using it for. Again, very precise, specific functions.
Perfect. That's awesome. I love that, the peptides really, a lot of folks are talking about them, but you really want to go to a trusted guide who is doing it with a lot of their patients and having success. So it's not the just kind of get it off the internet and rehydrate these things for yourselves. So coming down to the last third of our podcast, optimizing men's health. So, we get men talking, we get men invested on what their purpose, passion is, and really their why. So you get some wind behind their sails. When you talk about optimizing health, what is that? What does it mean? Why do we want to optimize it? What's going on?
Yeah, I'm glad that you asked this question. So, there is this spectrum of health. On one end is disease, it's illness, it's sick care, it's disease, cancer, stuff to put you in the hospital, COVID, etc. And our healthcare system is built around this concept of getting you from there to neutral, to free of disease. When we deal with cancer patients in urology, when I treat prostate cancer, bladder cancer, kidney cancer, we use the phrase NED, no evidence of disease.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got to no evidence of disease, NED, you're great, we're done.
Yeah.
Yay me, I'll see you in 6 months. And that's it. And so that whole focus is broken because it's based upon nothing more than stamping out disease, dealing with symptoms when they occur to get you back to some crummy baseline. And so my passion, and the passion that led me to actually leave traditional Western medicine to focus on my career in men's health optimization, is all about taking guys from that neutral baseline, crummy middle spot to peak performance, to optimize, to functioning at their true limitless potential. And that's taking guys to the next level. And how do you get there? That involves diving deep with analytics, with data, with a systems approach. And so that's where the Gapin code came from. It's a data-driven systems approach to men's health to help guys get not just to neutral, but to reach their full limitless potential.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So on the biometrics and the data-driven, you're looking at conventional blood work, maybe a little enhanced there. You're doing some of the extra testing, looking at nutritional analysis or oats, or, I'm just curious on how broad of a net are you casting in your program for folks?
So I start with genetics. Now, genetics enable us to take a very individualized approach when we look at men's health. So I look at things like, what kind of food should you be eating? What kind of food should you not be eating? What ratios of carbs to proteins to fats should you be eating? What foods may be causing inflammation? Are you at risk of insulin resistance? We can look at genetics around sleep. And do you have any genetics that predispose you to sleep disruption? Or your chronotype, meaning is your body going to tend to do better going to bed early, waking up early versus going to bed late, waking up late? How do we incorporate that? Genetics around detox. How does your detoxification, your phase 2 detox specifically, glutathione and all the other key aspects, the antioxidant system in your body to clear toxins and your inflammatory markers. Genetics around fitness. Some people do better with strength training, hypertrophy training, whereas others do better with endurance training. Make sure you're doing the right type of training. There are genetics around hormones and what levels do we need to pay particular attention to, and how can we dive deep into the right ones for you. And so I use that really as a starting point. Genetics help me really understand how are you as an individual different than the guy next to you, and how do I treat you differently. And then I go into functional labs. And so I'll do the traditional labs, but I'll also look at things like markers of inflammation and cardiometabolic risk factors like ApoB and Lp(a) and Lp(PLA2, and look at things like insulin levels, which are so important, and look at things like other hormones, like not just testosterone, but how about vitamin D, and how about your homocysteine, and how about your thyroid, not just TSH, but how about your free T3 that most people don't check. Look at your lipid markers, looking at your cholesterol balance, and not just looking at your LDL cholesterol, but how about the particle size and the particle count. And you see how in depth we're talking here. And this is just we're just getting started. And you look at Dutch testing, micronutrient testing, food allergy testing. It goes on. And that's where we have to really individualize to what the guy needs, because I could spend a year testing you. At some point, you got to kind of go. And so it's taking the diagnostics, personalizing it to what you need, what we know would be best for you, and leveraging that information. The key is don't just get a bunch of data, but actually leverage it and do something with it.
I love it. Yeah. That is uniquely your process, and in the integrative component, everybody has their systems approach component. It's like, how deep do you go, and how do you utilize it, right? Because you see those that are forever the diagnostics on, my specialty is more in neurodegeneration. It's like, well, gosh, I watch people get worked up this way and that way, and it doesn't matter because there's no solution for any of the answers that they're getting. Not that that's not valuable to have that in neurodegeneration, but it also, you have to have a game plan going forward. So in men's health, this is your why I wanted to bring you on as like the expert, is that you've been out there on that leading edge for so long, with your book and your knowledge base and your years in practice of actually helping that many people. So what are the levers that people can push on now to actually get some wind in their sails? Where do you recommend just starting as like some early wins for men or women watching for their men? Where could we start? Because that could get overwhelming, right? We just talked about the amount of data that we can collect to individualize, but there are some basic some platform or levers that I know you have found through time to get some, and you already mentioned the intermittent fasting or time restricted eating, but maybe give us some other ones there.
Yeah. So, I think that the stress component, we spent a lot of time already, but I'll just briefly mention that that's worth really emphasizing to practice some techniques toward reducing the effect that stress is having on your body. Check your labs, check your genetics, understand what's right for you. There are all these fads out there. I see so many guys come in, they're doing the keto diet because they think that's what they're supposed to be doing, and they're running on a treadmill for 3 hours a day, and that's what they think they're supposed to be doing, and it's not working. And genetics help you really dive into what's right for you. Get labs done to know from a functional perspective what's working and what's not working. Start with that. The intermittent fasting is amazing. We could talk about endocrine disruptors and things that we can do to minimize our exposure to these toxins, which coming full circle to how we started this conversation, the testosterone pandemic. I truly believe, based on all the literature out there, that endocrine disruptors are the underlying major etiology for the testosterone pandemic. Mm-hmm. And so we could look at, atrazine, which is sprayed on all our crops, especially in the Midwest. We could look at the plastic water bottles that we drink from. We could look at all the plastic food containers. We could look at the toxic personal care products like soap and shampoo and deodorant and cologne. And so really paying attention to these products that you're surrounding yourself with, putting in your body, foods and stuff that you're drinking. K-cups, the plastic of K, one simple thing you can do today is stop freaking using K-cups, because that hot plastic is leaching chemicals into your coffee every day.
Are those still used?
Apparently they are, yes.
Wow. Yeah.
You can box of 100 of them at Costco still. Yeah.
Goodness gracious. So those, that is such a big tip right there of removing those plastics. When you started out saying, over the last 2 decades, a 30% reduction of total testosterone. And then we see the stats of men over 40 years old, greater than 50% of men have erectile dysfunction. Testosterone levels are falling. It is basically like Save the Males is the campaign there on, infertility rates are going up as well. Our earth is giving us all kinds of symptoms to wake up, and we need to start changing. And how we change is by voting with our dollars and the economy of not purchasing these things in the first place. Don't bring them in your environment because they are making you sick. So that the breath work, And what you described there is kind of like box breathing, right? I mean, that's what Navy SEALs are using in battle to maintain calmness and alertness. And then the intermittent fasting, I mean, we've got men now on setting sail, the whole family unit, on just some basics to start with, on maybe the taping of the lip shut, or getting the Nestor book there, breath, or breathe, tomato maybe. Other last parting components, the last couple minutes of the show, we're just coming down to the essence. Folks listening, this is why I created the show, bringing experts on, sharing the nuggets. Like, this is stuff that will move the needle for you, your family, your men. If you're a man listening, share this with your friends, because this information is not coming down the pike to you. And Dr. Gapin is just, given it here, and actually offered his book as well. So please share the show with your friends, family member. Think of 2 people, share this one. Now, Doc, I'm going to hand it back over to you for some more wisdom from the fountain here.
I like to, when I give talks on this, I like to end with a story of my brother-in-law, but I'm gonna save that. You got to read the book to read the end of the story. Okay. But basically the take-home message is, you don't get today back. So make today your best day. Make a decision, live with intention that you're going to take control of your health, that you're going to be the master of your future.
I'm going to let that one sit in and just absorb that, receive that, folks. If you don't know where to start, just ask. Like, men, we're not really used to asking for help or support. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, you don't know which way to go, you're not thinking clearly, like, look, all of Dr. Gapin's contact information are in the show notes. You've got us here at What the Health and Nature Cures. We will get you plugged in with the right people. You need trusted guides. You need somebody that you can go to that can help direct the show for you, and lead you to the proverbial promised land of being a guide. Ultimately, you're doing the work. Like Dr. Gapin mentioned, like, you need to decide. That was a very big word that you put in there, Doc, and I love it. I really want to thank you for coming on. I'm going to give you one more nugget here. You got any other pearls here for us at the close?
Become Male 2.0. Read the book.
Love it. Love it. Well, we've got the contact information in the show notes. Everybody, if you enjoyed the show, What the Health, get out there, give us a 5-star review. Those make a difference. That's how people cut to the chase. They want to know, what are you learning? Maybe share one little nugget from this show that you learned and what you liked. I would be forever grateful. That's how we get the word out. That's how we create the change that we want to see, which for me is the more beautiful world our hearts know and desire, creating heaven on earth. Thank you for tuning in. I super appreciate you. I'm doing this for you. If you got any questions, send them on into the clinic. This is What the Health, and we are here on the Contact Talk Radio Tuesdays from 2 to 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.